Success to me is, it's that work-life balance, and you talk about it a lot. I don't think there is a work-life. As you said quite rightly, it's just life. But it's just laying down on your pillow at night and just closing your eyes and just going, oh. And she looked at Jenny and she said, I just don't want to die. I'm not ready. I don't want to die. And I caught the end of it, and she just started crying. And then I hugged her, and that was the last time I saw her. My sister Jill, she was my first sister who passed away, and she was only 42. She had ovarian cancer. I didn't even want to accept it, and I didn't see her for the last 3 months of her life, and I think I'd visit her, and that kills me now. For somebody who says they don't cry much, I don't think I've ever cried as much as when she passed away. One thing about all of this, you appreciate life, and you appreciate everything. I mean, you literally wake up in the morning and go, wow.
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. Through sharing the stories of our guests, I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant. It's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events, enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing. Okay, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm delighted to welcome my good friend, the legend that is Mr. Terry Bauer.
Hey, mate.
Terry, mate. Well, you've been such a big part of this journey for me, right? I think from county business clubs to actually you and Gareth coming up with a name, Different Hats, and the whole process, and being such a massive part of, especially over the last few years for me. And for a living, you help people share their stories, right? So what an honour it's going to be to give you the platform to share yours today.
I'm flattered, mate. Honestly, absolutely flattered.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I'm buzzing. And we've had many a chat over over coffee and of all sorts. And like I say, I'm just honoured to have you on, and it's going to be. I know we're going to have a great chat. So look, let's jump straight in as we always do. Okay, we're going to go. Terry Bauer, what does success mean to you? Define it for me.
Well, I've seen so many of your podcasts. In fact, I've seen every single one.
You're the one.
I'm a super fan. All that aside, I mean, we've said before many a time, success has changed. And funny enough, at the big breakfast the other day, the really interesting lady that you were speaking to was talking about how success changes with age. As a child of the 80s, teenager of the 80s, success was all about, got to have a nice car, got to have a really, a nice flat or a nice place, and, got to be seen in the right places and the right job. And it was all the things that have completely left me now, Yeah. Yes, when you get to a certain age, you attain some of that if you're very lucky, and I'm very lucky to have had a very nice life. It worked hard from it, but that's one of those things. Success to me has gone from those real business aspirations, because I enjoy what I do, to actually laying down on a pillow at night and having a clear conscience and not worrying about the next day, but looking forward to it. It sounds really simple. I mean, I know that you talk to a lot of your guests and you ask them about their secrets of success and how it's defined for them. And from a business point of view and life, I get that. I get quite emotional talking about it because to me it's so trivial, a thing where you're not thinking about the next day. I'm a terrible worrier. I used to worry about everything, health of everybody, my family, my friends, my work colleagues, everything like that. My football team, that's another story completely. And I just end up being awake at night. And I had a bit of insomnia for a while because of it. But success to me is, it's that work-life balance, and you talk about it a lot. I don't think there is a work life. As you said quite rightly, it's just life. But it's just laying down on your pillow at night and just closing your eyes and just going, just not thinking about anything, not having to think about anything or worry about anything.
That's so beautiful.
And it sounds so trivial because it's not as interesting as most people's version of success, but it's just having a clear, calm, settled mind. And that every day is, I love my dog, as everybody knows who ever meets me. And I've just worked out over the last few years when people say, be more dog. Dogs have a way of resetting when they sleep. They process all the things of the day, good and bad, and it gets sorted in their head. So I guess they're their own therapists. And the next day they're up wagging their tail. I don't remember yesterday. I guess in a business context you have to, but in life it's So I try and be more dog, and that's my definition of success. It's just waking up and going to bed with a clear conscience and looking forward to the next day, because you never know what it's going to bring. Literally never know what it's going to bring.
Mate, that's so beautiful because because actually we go through this life, and I spoke to Yav on Engler only a couple of weeks ago. He was saying about stuff, and he was saying actually we often complicate things in life, don't we? And it can be so simple, and even maybe when you go through adversity or traumas and stuff like that, all of them things play on your mind. But so you tend to sometimes then appreciate that. So like for me, like I say, sitting and watching the sunrise or the sunset, the simplest of things can be the most rewarding and the things that we feel most grateful for. But we still chase, and we still live in that world of chase. But there's something so beautiful about that, to just go, I'm just going to lie in bed and don't worry, and I'll just go to sleep at night. Because we spend a lot of time worrying. Rob Starr said, that Mark Twain quote, which I love, which is I'm an old man who've spent my life worrying about things, the majority of which never happened. Right? Absolutely,
yeah. Good episode, by the way.
But there's something in that, isn't there? That we spend our time. So to get to, so do you now, where you are right now, do you worry a lot less?
I sleep like a log. I sleep like, to coin a phrase, I sleep like the dead. Every night I'm just gone. Yeah. But then it's weird for me because I've got a weird mechanism, and I sleep when I'm stressed as well. And so it took a while for me to realise that I wasn't stressed to be able to fall asleep. But then I know it sounds really topsy-turvy because I sleep anyway. Funny enough, I fell asleep in the North Stand at the Goldstone, Brighton against Norwich, in the 80s. And, it was a great game. But I just it's not narcolepsy or anything like that. I was standing by the stanchion because it was standing at the time. And I just remember my mates going, look, he's asleep. And they were taking a mickey out of me, of course. And I was gone for about 5 minutes. I was properly asleep. I didn't pass out. I wasn't fainting. I just fell asleep.
I was going to say, that must have been a good game, mate.
It was a great game. I think we won 3-2, yeah. Great game. I love Brighton there in my blood, of course. But, yeah. But no, sleep. I go to bed every night and I just sleep. And I don't think about anything. I don't look at my phone. I don't do anything. That's it.
Has that been a recent thing, or as over the last few years, or when did you get to that point where or what did you do to make that change? So
I think I stopped worrying about things that I couldn't control. I admit now I'm having a little bit of therapy. I go once every couple of weeks and I see a therapist. In fact, I should have just phoned you because I could talk to anything about you. Talk to you about anything. Sorry. But it's So I think it's probably about 5 years ago when it really clicked. It was during COVID. Was it 5 years ago? COVID. I lose all track of time. Honestly.
Well, COVID did that to us, didn't it? But yeah, 5 years ago, COVID 2020.
It was during COVID when Gareth and I were working with clients online, which was a bit of an epiphany for us. It was great. But I just stopped worrying about things that I couldn't control because I couldn't go out and see clients. I couldn't go out and meet people. We couldn't network. I couldn't go and see family even, which was really difficult at the time. And I thought, you know what? What's the point of worrying about it when I can't control it? It's not going to make any difference, even when I'm there or not. And for some reason, it just clicked into place.
I think COVID did that for a lot of people in that sense, because it was for the first time probably in our lifetime something was completely like life changed as we knew it for that period of time, didn't it? Like we have gone back and often gone back into the way things were a little bit before, but so much of that period of time, we thought there was a period, wasn't there? You go, is this how life's going to be now? We may not, but so that feeling of, I guess, like you said, that lack of control, we couldn't control. We could only do with what was in front of us, and I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes around that time. So that's interesting. Let's go back. I'm really keen to, like I said, I'm really keen to share your story. I want to know something. What do I need to know about Terry Bauer growing up, about your life and how that shaped who sits in front of us?
Well, my family came over from South Africa. I was about 3. Everyone, but they all sort of went back in droves, and then a few came over again over the years. But but I had a great childhood. I didn't go to nursery school, funny enough. I was at home till I was like 5, and then I went. My older sister Jill used to say to me, "That's why I'm a little bit slow." But it turns out I'm not slow. I just interpret things in a different way. And Gareth and I work in a different way because he's as sharp as a tack. I tend to sit back and be a little bit more, it's the so what type thing. But yeah, I had a great childhood. I mean, I had no traumas. I love my sport, and you talked about before, sport is a great way of making friends, and I always had friends because you do any type of sport, and it's that you're in the trenches. Like I bump into guys and girls that I've done sport with over the years, and maybe I haven't seen them for 20 years, maybe plus sometimes. But you just click back into the same thing, and there's no airs, there's no graces, there's no pretense, and you're exactly you just click back into the things that you used to talk about, and that's the real beauty of growing up and playing sport. But I played football at school. I was captain of my team when I was in primary school and in secondary school. My good friend Kev Martin, we played for the first 11, which was the sixth form when we were in the 5th year. So that was quite a thing. I love my cricket. I love my rugby until everyone grew to 7 foot.
Rugby was not my thing. Yeah,
I was quick on the wing, but then everyone's like really tall, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not for me. But I loved my sport, and that really defined who I was. I think because I was quite, I think I was quite a nervous child. I wasn't bullied as such, but I was on the cusp of being. But my older brother John, who people think was my dad at the time, because I'm the youngest of 7.
Wow, that's a big family.
My older brother was like 23 years older than me. So, he used to take, because my parents were that much older, a bit older. In South Africa, I'm the runt. I'm the last. I'm the runt of the list. But my parents loved me, and I was almost like an only child because my siblings are sort of grown up and left home by then. They were sort of in there. Well, the nearest sister to me was my sister Jill, and she was 8 years older than me, and she was sort of on the cusp of leaving home. And she fought with my dad because she's like my daughter now, actually, Ava. She's a carbon copy. She goes out, and they're a bit feral. She's sort of 19, and she's at that stage where she's finished her A-levels. She's waiting to do something else, and she's sort of just doing a few part-time jobs, and she's feral. She's in it. She's like a ghost. She's literally, we hear the front door go, and that's it. But my sister Jill was the same with my dad, and I didn't realise at the time that there was so much love there, but they used to fight like cat and dog. Not physically, but they used to argue, and if he said that was black, she'll say it's white, and he'll go, no, actually it's a bit grey, whatever. They would never meet. There would never be no middle ground. because they were so alike, and that's like my daughter and I. We're just two peas in a pod, and we clash every now and then. But it's a nice clash. It's quite a positive thing. But yeah. So my sister's was the last one growing in the house with me. Of course, I got all the hand-me-downs, so I was more or less like an only child. And I loved my school. You know, I went to Cottesmore in Hove, and then as primary, and then Cardinal Newman. And it was great school because we sports. It was fantastic for sports, and that's really what got me through school.
And what was like? So I guess like seeing your family, like having older brothers and stuff like that, and your older sisters, and looking at them growing up and then going out to work and stuff like that. What was your obviously sport was a big thing for you, but what was the passion there at that young age? Was there something in your mind, I wanted to go and do this, or where was your head at?
Well, I was quite impressionable, and I mean, you watch The Wolf of Wall Street and you want to go out into work. I was going to go to university. I wanted originally to be a graphic designer and design cool album covers for bands.
Yeah.
But I got a job, started to earn some money, got into sales, and I was quite good at it at the time. So I enjoyed it, and of course that's it. Everything else goes out the window. And so I was working at it used to be TSB Trustcard, and they had a great football team. We got to play at great stadiums. We played at the Goldstone at the time. We played at White Hart Lane, Villa Park, for like the national team against the Banks, and it was brilliant. 3 Points Lane, I think it's called. Oh, sorry.
Moving on.
No, but and then I was lucky enough to get a job working for Video Arts. It used to be owned by John Cleese, and they sold funny training. At the time, it was softer skills, so it was motivation, time management, leadership, all sorts of those things. But then nowadays, those skills are front and centre, and we were selling VHS video packages to clients. But we had clients like the Post Office and Marks and Spencer. Of course, I was commuting to London, but I loved it, and it was the buzz, and that was the buzz of sales, and you know, people used to ask me what I did for a living. I just said, as I say nowadays, I just make friends for a living. And that's not a full statement because, you know, I mean, you're a great friend, you know, but it's just one of those things where you just, and I love it now because I've been through the whole foot in the door, you know, Gordon Gekko type, you got to buy this and blah, 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 never see you again, to, I was always more consultative. So I'd always end up, you know, having conversations about anything apart from business, and then a little bit of business at the end. And I was quite successful in that, and I didn't know why at the time. I've done formal sales training, but it never really stuck with me.
Because I think, like, because I'm with you. Like, I look back at, you know, those things from the 80s, and I've seen Boiler Room and things like that, and
Glengarry,
sell, and that hardcore, like, and people always used to say to me, "God, you'd be such a brilliant salesman." I'm like, I think I'd be terrible. I certainly couldn't do that, picking up the phone and ring. That's not my thing. But for me, sales is purely building relationships. That's how I view it. I say the same with networking, building a business. All of them things is building relationships. If you're, as you are, right, we share similar values. You go, if you're a good person and you can go out there, can you? What you always seem to do whenever I hear you talk to people, what can you do to help people? You're there to help people, right? What can I do to help you? And if you come from that place, I referenced it a few times recently. There was that the podcast by Path of a Swami where he talks about the what it means to be successful. I put a post up about it as well. And actually, the 3 keys to feeling and truly successful are loving what you do, helping others to be successful, and genuinely being happy for other people's success.
Yeah.
If you can tick those boxes, you're doing it. So if you come from a good place and you can, and all you're doing is building relationships, that for me is what makes a great salesperson. Then, right?
Yeah, it's not even selling, is it? Really?
No, you're not.
You're just having a human conversation, and I love the fact that sales has gone from stick your foot in the door until they say yes to, you know,
Let's have a chat.
in fact, whenever we've worked together, we've never spoken about business really, and it's at the end. Oh, by the way, blah blah blah. It's so nice, but again, you know more than better than I do. It's all about the problem that you're solving for them, and it's quite a nice feeling. You almost it's almost like you adopt them for a while, especially when you work in a personal level like we do with clients. But that comes from my family. That comes, you know, I had a very loving family. I mean, I had nothing in my childhood that was ever not. You know, you go through things that are indifferent sometimes, an argument or whatever. Because my family, I don't know if it's because they're South African or whatever, but whenever we had a beef, we'd argue then and we'd get it out and it's done, dusted, gone. We didn't fester, we didn't sulk, we didn't, ignore people. It was all done. Whether it was over around the dinner table, the rare times we all got together.
Yeah.
Used to be Christmas, but then it got a bit sparse as sort of people moved away and stuff. And then I lost my mum, and then we all sort of scattered a bit.
How old was you? How old was you when you lost your mum? What?
I think I was 19. No, I think I was about 19, almost 20. Yeah.
What? And
I was a grown up, so a man, as it were. You gotta. And my because my older brothers, my two older brothers, and my dad were very like you gotta keep. You don't show emotion. You just keep it all in there, and you never show weakness. That's you never cry. You never. I don't think. I haven't cried properly probably since I was like, 30.
Really?
Crazy. Now I cry all the time. I watched Back to the Future the other night, and it was just on late, and I sat up late and usual. Dog there, me there watching telly, half asleep.
Yeah.
And I watched the end. It was the end of Back to the Future 3, and I was bawling. I had no idea. Even my dog was embarrassed. She got out and left the room.
Mate,
I don't know why.
those 80s movies, mate, they kill us.
Mate, I don't know why. Just the weirdest things. I'm not a crier. I mean,
But what with like, was it like that for your sisters as well, or like as a family? Was there not showing that emotion, or was there more leniency for your sisters?
No, in some ways, my sisters were even harder than my brothers. I mean, you could tell they grew up with older brothers, like my daughter, because they've got that weird steeliness inside. That unbreakable sort of thing. But of course, my sisters used to dress me up and God knows what. And when I got a little bit older, it was quite nice because my older sister Joy used to set me up with some of her friends. That's another story.
Nice.
Never successful.
Yeah.
But you got to have your knockbacks. But having said that, they were. I think my mum and dad were very. They were very loving, but they always had that drummed into us, that steeliness. More so my older siblings, because they were around them a lot. They had them a lot longer than I did, in hindsight. But and it was sort of passed down to me that not where you never. With my sister, it was different, where you never show emotion, but you use it. And it was my mum and dad used to have a really interesting way of talking to us, where if we were in trouble, they would never raise their voice. It was almost it was almost like an unwritten thing, an unspoken thing. They'll just give you a look, and you know that you just don't cross that line. We never knew what that line was, what would happen, because it never happened. But they never raised a hand, never lifted a finger, whatever, towards us in anger or anything like that. But there was just a way that, particularly my mum had the most awful temper, but I never saw it. Apparently she used to have a real temper. She did chase me upstairs once and I locked myself in the loo, and she was banging on. She wouldn't do anything. She was scaring me, but that sounds terrible, but it was just one of those things.
But again, that was
I think I'd broken a window out the back, and she was like livid, but she wasn't meant to harm me. She wasn't going to harm me or anything, but she was just, she just had a bit of a temper, but it would never come to that. It would always just be just a certain look, but it was almost like a respect, like, where my kids say things to me and they get away with a lot because I'm quite a soft touch. But sometimes when they know they've a little bit crossed the line, you just give them a look and they know, okay, well,
What? So you're 18 and you lose your mum. What? Going back to that point, like, what did that impact you at the time? Was it something like, was she ill and you sort of prepared yourself for it? And it's obviously hard to think about, obviously losing someone at that age. But where was your mind at then? Like, did that impact you then, or?
It was a slightly delayed reaction. I mean, my mum was ill for quite a while. She's like 40 cigarettes a day for 40 odd years. I mean, it's she was 60. I think she was 69, 70 when she died. But she was ill for a couple of years before that. She was at home bedridden for a little bit, but then she got a bit better, and then she got a little bit worse, and then she was in Hove General, which is closed now. I think it's a block of flats now. I don't know why I'm laughing at that.
Yeah.
Gallows humour, mate. But and then she was in hospital for a while, and then she passed away after that. But she's my mum, and I feel guilty now because sometimes I look back and I can't remember her face, and then I have photos that I found and stuff like that, because you don't really take a lot of photos at the time. We didn't have phones, of course, with cameras on them, and I regret that. But sometimes I feel very guilty because I remember my dad, because my dad was always, me and my dad were like that, and me and my mum were like that, but I didn't have enough time with my mum, and I really regret that. But yeah, my mum was ill for best part of 5 years before she passed away. She wasn't in any too much pain, but she was near the end. And I was going out with a girl at the time, and we went to visit her in Hove General. And my mum was always very how can I say? Sorry, me.
Right, mate.
My mum was always very like a pillar of the family. She was like, she was almost like, in old-fashioned terms, wearing the trousers. She was very much she was only a little lady, but she was very much like Greek or Italian mothers, the mama says, and that's it, you don't argue with mama. She sat on the bed, I'll never forget it, and she actually said it to my girlfriend. I was sitting there next to her, and I'd just gone to the loo, and I came back, and she was talking to my girlfriend Jenny at the time, and she was chatting to her, and she looked at her, and I'd just come back and sat down, and I get the feeling she didn't want me to see it. That's why she was trying to say it when I was out of the room. And she looked at Jenny and she said, "I just don't want to die. I'm not ready. I don't want to die." And I caught the end of it, and I've never spoken about that to anyone, mate. Honestly, it was just a look that she gave it to me after that, as if to say, "I really didn't mean you to hear that." Because as parents, my parents are very good at that. They always protect you from things. They don't hide the truth and the realities of life from you. But you wouldn't tell them certain things. As I was the youngest, they would always sugarcoat things a little bit, and my brothers and sisters would, because they, and that affected me later in life with my sister. But I'll talk about that in a bit, hopefully. But yeah, I'll never forget that, the look that she looked at me as if to say, I really didn't mean for you to hear that. And then she just started crying, and then I hugged her, and that was the last time I saw her, because she wasn't awake the next time I saw her, which was 2 days later. I had a meeting in London, and I couldn't not go. It was a job interview, in fact. I didn't get the job, but and I went back 2 days later, and she'd already slipped into. They said she had a pneumonia at the end, but it's kind of your body shutting down. But she was in a room. She'd been moved upstairs, and I never forget. I walked in, and the window was wide open. It was freezing that day. It was in October, and it was freezing. And I kept thinking. I said to the nurse, "Why is the window open?" He said, "Well, she's got this condition," and she was sort of telling me, and I didn't take it in at the time, that there comes a point where they just keep them make them comfortable, and then of course they slip away, and they don't notice whether it's cold, hot, indifferent, or whatever. I don't know at the time. In hindsight, maybe I should have inquired more, and then she didn't know, so I gave her a kiss on the forehead, and I spoke to her about half an hour. Maybe she knew I was there, maybe she didn't, and then I went home, and then my dad went down there, and then I got a call from my dad saying, "I'll be home in a bit, just to let you know, your mum's passed away." And then he came home, and we just sat in silence. We literally just, for hour, 2 hours passed, I don't know. He was in his chair, there was mum's chair, and I used to lie on the couch, so I was on the couch, but then I sat in mum's chair, and we just sat in silence.
Were your brothers and sisters there now, or
they were seeing my mum in and out, because they were out working, etc. But they went to see her as much as they can. I think my older brother Ron was there when she passed away, and his wife, and my niece at the time, Suzanne. But I've never really talked to them about, because I don't think she said anything, or in particular. She was just unconscious, not unconscious. When I don't know. I always like to think that she knows that we were there, but I regret the fact I wasn't there. But then in hindsight, I don't think I would have wanted to be there when she passed away. I think you say, and I didn't realise I was saying goodbye to her.
At that time, before.
Yeah, because it's your parents. You think, oh, they're going to be there in a couple of weeks and whatever, and I'd still be able to. They woke up for a bit. I was accepting the fact that she was going, and there was nothing I could do about that.
Yeah.
But it was more of a case of, I don't know. You expect it, but it's still a shock. It's like, oh my God, she's gone. But then I knew that, and my dad explained to me, she wasn't in any pain. She passed away peacefully, and that was it.
If like, mate, thank you for sharing that.
No, it's all right. Sorry, I've got a bit. I've never really spoken about that moment ever.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you sharing it. I guess just in hindsight, you look at what you've achieved and all the stuff that you have done throughout your life, and how probably so much of that unconditional love growing up from your mum has helped shape that. But if you could, like you said, you never said to her, but if you could go back to that point and you had that time to say something, what would you say to her, like with in hindsight of your life, I guess, from where you are now and what you've done?
She never saw my kids grow up or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably just thank you, because I never really, at the time, your mum and dad, and if your parents are alive now or whatever, you don't, not that you don't appreciate them, but as kids and growing up, and I was still a kid, I was like 19, 20, so we're still babies really. I'll probably I would just say thank you, because I'd never really thanked her, because they do so much for you, and it's not a cliche, just so many things that you don't even realise, until some of the things I don't realise now, the lessons they taught me. Things that would happen now, and I go, do you know what? Oh my God, my mum used to do that, or my dad used to do that. Even now, even the other day, I think something happened, and I was like, oh my God. And you just get transported straight back to that time. I'm not being a crybaby. Oh, I miss my mummy and whatever. But you do. Mate. I miss my mum, dad, and my brother and sisters every single day of my life. I think about them every day, every single day. At some point, whether it's before I go to sleep, wake up, something I do. There's an interesting. I grew up, with things like my brothers and sisters, music like Pink Floyd, all that sort of stuff, and Hendrix and whatever. There's a bit on Wish You Were Here, the Pink Floyd album, and it's on Shine On You Crazy Diamond, the first thing. No, it's not. It's Wish You Were Here, the second track on the album. And there's a bit in it that sounds like my mum. I can't explain it. Because when I was doing my exams, I used to sit in my room, music on, windows open in the summer, revising whatever, and or when I was painting or drawing, because I love to do that as well. And I always had an album. Of that particular album, there's a bit, and it sounds like someone downstairs going, "Dearie," and it sounds like my mum. Wow. I'll play it for you. Honestly, there's a bit, and every time to this day when I play that album,
it reminds you.
Yeah, that's weird. I'd never thought of that till now, actually.
Amazing.
It's a tiny, tiny word, and it sounds like someone saying, "Dearie." My mum used to call from downstairs when it was dinner time or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm just going to say something about one of our sponsors, Riverval. The world of cars, vans and minibuses is often a pain point for many of us. The hassle of finding the right vehicle, let alone looking after it, are all more things to add to our lists as busy people. Riverval's mission is to make motoring manageable, and that's why they provide leasing, purchasing, servicing and vehicle management. So whether you have one family car or a fleet of vans for your business, Riverval are your trusted vehicle supplier. Visit www.riverval.co.uk. Okay, let's jump back to the podcast. Mate, tell me, because I guess we said we today we chat about loss and grief and whatnot, and we started obviously there with your mum, and I know you mentioned just off air about your dad not long after, a few years later, passed as well. I guess just take us through that again, being such a young age, like 20, 21, 22, and losing both parents. And I guess processing grief and loss at that time, if you go back to them times, how did you, your coping mechanisms there, I guess, for people listening who have, maybe with a younger generation or even people older, I look around and think I'm so fortunate. Of course, I've lost people, but not in my immediate family. So I don't know. I haven't experienced that, and as I'm getting older, that's inevitable, and I understand that. But I'm holding on to that with dear life at the moment. So you sort of go like, but to have to cope with that and deal with that at such a young age, how did you process that back then?
I think it gives you it hardens you in a way that you don't want. I mean, I was sort of prepared for when my dad passed away, but you're not, because when at the time it's still horrific. But I mean, I didn't cry when my dad passed away. I didn't cry for years afterwards, and I always thought really badly of myself that I didn't show that. But then even now, it comes out in different ways, and I've no idea why. Grief hits you in different ways. And I guess I was an adult at the time because I was 20, 21, etc. And 20, 23 when my dad died. But it does. It gives you. It's weird. My family always used to have a joke that we always used to get, particularly my nephews and nieces, because I've got 11, 12, 13, I think. And they're all because my brother and sister are that much older. They're sort of my age. They're around sort of like 40 to between 40 and 50. So we all grew up. I was an uncle before I was born. I mean, we all grew up, being. That's what it felt like. We all grew up sort of being together. So that generation, but we always have a standing joke on our WhatsApp group that we only get together, see you at the next funeral. I know it's terrible, dark humour, but it seems like then we always say, we'll get together, we'll see you next week or whatever. But then we never do. We do keep in touch, one's in Wales, a few are scattered around here, one's in Australia. But a few of them are sort of local, so we do keep in touch. But yeah, it was always a standing joke and it was a mix between gallows humour and like a coping mechanism. See you at the next funeral. And it was weird because we'll be at the next funeral, and I know I don't want to be defined by death and anything, but we were just like with people you knew as playing sports with growing up. We just clicked back into the old routine, and it became a celebration as opposed to grieving, which looking back was probably a nice way to remember people.
But there's something really. I think for me, there's something really important about and there's even like things that are starting. I've seen a lot recently. It was a TV program I watched, and there was some other bits and people talking about actually they're having, rather than having funerals, people are having their celebration of life. And while they're still alive, some people are having those part. And I sort of. Again, I talk a lot about reframing, right? I want to reframe success, reframe failure, reframe these narratives that we've been taught. And I think, death is something that we don't talk about. Like, it is almost one of them taboo subjects we don't talk about. And I wonder, is that because we still believe we're all going to live forever? I don't want to talk about it because that's going to happen. Just actually, it can be again, reframing it could be a really morbid conversation, and obviously that comes with emotions of sadness and that. But at the same time, if it is, can it be, if we reframed it to be a celebration of life, and you take that, and although you're losing someone and you've got to process that in some way, there is a way of looking at it going, they're amazing people, they've done amazing things. It was a privilege to know them for that period of time, and look at that as the celebration of those times, as opposed to the feeling, the feeling of loss. But I guess it's difficult at early 20s to process, those feelings. Maybe not as emotionally mature. I don't know. I'm just
emotionally immature.
Yeah.
I still think I'm 18 in my head. So
me both, mate. I wear baseball caps.
Yeah.
Like wearing crop tops. Kelly's like, what the
body
hell are you doing?
Body hasn't quite got the message, but
But yeah, I'm just interested for that, like that process of having that loss so early, like you said, almost hardening you to the world a little bit
in ways that I didn't want. I don't think I was ready for. It's like, if you've ever had your heart broken at an early age or whatever with a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, it sort of tarnishes a little bit of the future, but then maybe that's not what love was at the time. And I think about that at death. Maybe I wasn't ready to process it, so it was just the universe saying, well, look, okay, here's a coping mechanism I'm going to instill in you. You're not going to realise it until later on, with age and experience.
And have you felt that, like, over the last few years, is that something that you've started to now process and look back at those times and try and process those emotions a bit more?
A lot more now, and it's coming out in my work because obviously we hear people's stories. Now, as a byproduct of what we do, for some reason it gets personal. People share their personal, which is great because that gives you an idea of how they get to be the person they are. It's exactly what you do, because everybody has a story to tell. Absolutely, mate.
Yeah.
But I think it's as a byproduct of that, hearing other people's stories, I can resonate with things that they've been through, and it helps me come to terms with things that I've been through. You know, death is part of life. I get that, and I don't want to be defined by that. And that's what I always thought, particularly when my mum died. I'm not going to be defined by this. I'm not going to, see a picture of her or think of her and just get weepy. I'm going to use it and just. When I think of my mum and my dad, etc., and everyone that's passed, I get overjoy happiness because I remember the good times and the bad times, but the bad times seem good. Be more dog again. You process it, and you come to terms with it. But yeah, listening to people's stories for a living, I mean, it's great. But then I get to resonate with how they come to terms with things, and it's very cathartic. In some ways, it's selfish because we get to sort of exercise our demons through listening to our clients. And we're so thankful. I mean, we're like kids at Christmas the night before we're going to work with a client on any level, because you literally never know what you're going to get. But
and it's such a how many times I spoke about. I know Gareth's been on, and we've like the process that you take people on, that journey you take people on. I think in my testimonial, I think the best way I could describe it was magical. That's the best way you can.
It's always very humbling. I mean, it's absolutely humbling,
but
mate.
It really is, because but it is a magical experience because you find out, and this is again back to, for me, the whole thing around business and life and stuff like that. Business over here, life. It's not people buy from people. So if your business. If you're someone over here in your business and you're someone over here in your personal life, there's no alignment there. So how can you bring your whole self here and your whole self there? You can't do that, can you? So I think for people listening, I think that just the stuff that we're talking about and processing, which can be hard to deal with, especially if people going through that, but actually just looking at alignment with your values, whatever that looks like in life. People will buy from people, and building that personal relationship on a deeper level, because you can share your story, right?
Absolutely,
your story, not have a specific story here, and no, that's not my story over there. And I wonder, has that been, because of the work you do, has that enabled you to process and be able to speak more openly about your personal feelings and stuff like that? Have you been able to? Because I know you've mentioned to me before about I haven't cried, or I just brought up South African parents where got to have a stiff upper lip. But are you better at that now and being able to share that?
I think, because we used to talk about perspective over perception. So people don't. The whole point of what we do is to help people, help their clients see their business through their eyes just for a moment, but then not for the whole time, but then get perspective. So see why they see it like that. So it's not just one or the other. And that's, I guess, that's a bit more of a coping mechanism that I've used to help me over the years. And not necessarily I really need help, but there are certain stresses in your life, etc., that you go through. But I've learnt now in therapy as well that and I'm not ashamed to admit that. It's just being able to talk to somebody. I'm not an alcoholic or whatever, that sort of thing. Not that there's, not casting aspersions on that or anything, but people are in different things for different situations. And this was just to be able to talk to people. But I've never opened up about my mum and things, which is weird. You've got a weird gift of people just talking to you. But having said that, it's through the process of, I guess it was almost like the universe pointed me to this direction and doing what we do, because it enabled me to cope with things that I probably didn't think I needed to cope with, and would come out in different ways. You know, like anger will come out in different ways, or sadness, or joy, or whatever, and you don't realise why they're coming out. Listening to some of the client stories that we deal with, that's real adversity. You know, mine's nothing. Mine's natural, the natural thing of life. And I've always thought there's nothing particularly interesting or educational about that I can learn from it. But then something else will pop up, and I go, do you know what? In some ways, again, this is sounding really horrible, but I'm glad I went through that, because it's enabled me to cope with this or that or that, and I wouldn't have been able to cope with it without that. I know that sounds like a bit of a double-edged sword.
I think, like, and we can all compare our adversity with other people's and go, I haven't been through anything. And like, I look at my life and what trauma have I faced? I haven't faced any real trauma. I've been loved unconditionally. I've got lovely people around me. You know, I've never been through any real loss, and so I've
But that's fantastic.
I've been blessed with that. So you go, but you know, it doesn't mean that then what if does that not enable me to feel times of sadness or disappointment or have negative thoughts or any of them things? Of course, it's just, I think one of the fascinating things about this conversation is trying to get people to understand how we deal with emotions, because when this is something we're not taught, right? We're not, and it's, again, back to what we spoke a bit off air about, like kids, and I'm bringing up my kids. Like, they're so emotionally aware, which is amazing, and I'm like, I want to encourage that so much more. And we talk about them, try and share our feelings, and by doing that, they're encouraging me to share. Because I was probably a bit more. I am. Quite people see me get emotional, and I am a bit like that. But I do think even growing up, you still go, no, it's not me. You've got to be this guy, and we wear these masks. Yeah. And I think there's something. So I think that next generation, if we can encourage more emotional awareness, understanding and dealing with emotions, because it's okay to feel sad. It's okay, because with sadness you can feel joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's and how do you really appreciate joy if you haven't felt sadness, and whatever that gets you to at that point? Because I guess, like, again, with the loss and that those chapters of your life, being the youngest, you know, I guess it was inevitable that you was going to lose people before you, which, you know,
I didn't realise how soon,
but yeah,
and in what order.
And I guess that's it, like the catalogue of that, like mum, dad, in a short space of time. But then, so you're one of 7, and I know you sort of mentioned it, but you've lost. You're the only one left now, right?
Basically,
you've lost all of, and has that period been over the last few years, like with
probably. My sister Muriel died. It was on New Year's Eve, 3 years ago, I think. Yeah, and she was in her sleep. My nephew went to see her the next day, as he normally does, you know, to go and see mum, whatever. And she was he thought she was asleep on her bed with her cat, and she passed away in the night. But it was just another step in you know, in the old grief train, as we call it, in the bowers. It's just one of those things. Again, I sound like I'm making light of it, but I'm not. It's a coping mechanism. I tend to joke about the more serious things in my life, and that gets me through. Which is, my therapist said that it's. I can call her my therapist now, because I feel like my therapist says that's something I need to address, and just a problem shared is a problem halved. And it's a cliche, but it's just, as soon as you talk about something, it's like somebody going, tss, and it's just a pressure off, even for that moment.
Do you, like, I know you've mentioned that to me before, like, you know, just in conversation about your joke about something to do. Is it? And I'm not a therapist. So I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking out loud. But is it that because that was forced on you when you was young and not knowing how to maybe deal with those emotions, that actually you've not, I guess, you've just blocked those feelings away. So naturally, just sitting in, and I guess I'll refer to myself a little bit in this as well. Like, actually, we're not taught how to deal with emotions, right? So we're not, like, just to enable them feelings to come in and sit with those emotions, rather than go, no, I've got to get up and get on with it, or so it's more difficult to process that, right? So
yeah. But one thing I have learned is that it's like an airline analogy when they say, put in an emergency, God forbid, put your mask on before you help others. And if you're not right in yourself, how can you help anyone else? It's almost like a life metaphor. It's really just makes you think.
Is that being a bit of a real, like for you, knowing that to be the best version of yourself, I've got to now put this mask on myself. I've got to put that on, and I've got to learn how to deal with these. Or process, not even deal, but process. I guess that's the key thing, isn't it? Trying to process these things. So, because you're saying that, so 3 years ago was she the first?
My sister Muriel. Yeah. She was, she passed. But it's just. But funny enough, you said process, and that's interesting because I do have a process of dealing with things now, and that's where I first of all I have to say it's not my fault and it's out of my control. And once I accept that, I can actually not so much move on when you're ready, but I can accept that and actually it allows me to grieve in the right way, not thinking it's my fault. My sister Jill, she was my first sister who passed away, and she was only 42. She had ovarian cancer. She thought she was pregnant for like 3 or 4 months, but obviously things have changed now in medicine, and they find it a lot sooner. But and that was another thing where I didn't even want to accept it, and I didn't see her for the last 3 months of her life, and I didn't go to visit her, and that kills me now. I should have, but I just couldn't bring myself to it, because we were always thick as thieves, because she was the next one up from me. It was that sibling rivalry, but we would just have great times together. And I didn't want to accept the fact that she's ill, and I thought, oh, she'll be fine, I'll go and see her next. And then she passed away, and it was, I don't think I've ever, for someone who says they don't cry much, I don't think I've ever cried as much as when she passed away. I mean, I was incandescent for months. I just didn't know what to do. I was lost, and then it slowly came back. I was missing work, losing touch with friends. And then one day you wake up and you just go, okay, I've got to do something. Yeah, it's I don't really talk about those things much, because of this reason, because it takes me back to a time that was, particularly in my life with like relationships, and that's all the stuff around it. It was all negative, and it was all connected for some reason, and I don't know. Looking back, I guess it was just me and the way it made me feel. But it's just one of those things. But it makes you one thing about all of this, the Bauer death train, as it were. You appreciate life, and you appreciate everything. I mean, you literally wake up in the morning and go, wow. I think I'm a ticking time bomb, but I'm pretty healthy for my age. I'm 57 now, and I run, I swim, etc. But my head's good now. I'm in a good place. I wasn't a little while ago, but now I've come out of that, and I'm through talking and opening up a bit more, just accepting my faults.
You said you weren't in a good place. Share with us that period, if you can. What it weren't in a good place where, like, mental health wise, didn't feel good, and I guess 2 parts. That just share, if you can, about that period, and I guess where your head was at that point. But then also what helped you to get out of that? What helped you to change that direction and come out of it?
Well, emotionally was we went through a bit of a dip in the business, and it's like when you're working for yourselves, you're out seeing people, clients, etc. You work with them, and while you're working with them, it's that little trough, then you go into a peak again. at the time, I think I'd lost about 6 clients that we'd pitched for, and historically inside stories, we probably win every 3 and 5 clients that we talk to, because it's an incredibly personal thing that they're doing. So it's an investment for them. So they very rarely pull out. But we had a string of losses, and that really affected me, because not so much in terms of success of the business and you know, having all those nice things that come with it, but it's an ego thing as well. And again, that sounds really pretentious and self-serving, but you know, I'm thinking, what have I done wrong? And of course, you know, we had a dip in our finances at that time, and it sent me into a bit of a spiral, and I was stressed. But you're still going out networking, you're still talking to people, etc., and you're putting on a brave face. And then, because it's a thing that you and I talk about quite a lot, is you know, I of times of stress, I throw myself into my work, and then lo and behold, business picks up. It's just a numbers game, but it's more of an emotional numbers game now, where it's we're not super selective on who we work with, but people gravitate towards people, you know, like-minded businesses, and we're a lot smarter in how we work. I particularly am. But yeah, in times of stress, I throw myself into the business, and I didn't realise I was doing exactly the thing I should have been: getting more meetings, going out and seeing more people, networking, just showing your face and turning up and being nice to people and just chatting and having really good conversations. And now it's starting to bear fruit again. I never thought I'd be in that position, because you know me, I'll talk to anyone. I'll talk to people at the bus stop.
Which is a lost art, isn't it? People don't
it is
do that.
Lost art conversation. There you go. And you never know what you're going to get. Literally, people open up for things. But that was. But I throw myself into the business more in times of stress, which is actually a terrible way to do business. But then I have this thing where one of my best friends in the world says that I have this thing called where I Terence it. I Terence compartmental it. My mum used to call me Terence when I was in trouble, and I compartmentalize things, so I can have a traumatic experience, and then I can walk into a room and network, and I can just be, and I forget about. That's the only thing I can liken to is doing sport, where whatever trouble you're having in your life, that's what got me through a lot of the grief as well growing up, is for that 90 minutes or whatever on a football pitch, on a cricket pitch, or wherever, it's just gone. You are just in the moment, and you are just free and lovely and feel happy and whatever. And you only focus on that. And that's the way that I look at work, which is quite weird, because when the business is doing good, I don't want people necessarily to think that I'm stressed in life.
It's so hard.
And it's a weird sort of gravy train, a weird little sort of circle it goes. It's a vicious circle. But then I'm happy at the moment, and you know, I love my life, and you know, I've got good friends, and the most important thing is the business community is just second to none in Brighton. Everybody's so you know, you meet somebody and they don't say, you know, what have you been like? They go, how are you? And you're going to go to London and wherever, and different networking events, etc. And that's not the first question. And you don't even have to know somebody in Brighton. I met some lovely people this morning at an event, and it's, hi, how are you doing? How are you? I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for asking. How are you? And it's a completely different mentality.
It's a wonderful. I've spoke about it many times, even at Breakfast Club recently, and I share. I'm so fortunate, and you know, I've shared openly. I've had ups and downs and dips in my even over the last few years. Even when, you know, people see you as a certain persona that you've got, but I'm just getting so much better at I guess trying to learn to process my feelings and be honest about those feelings. To be honest, to go, actually, I'm struggling a bit at the minute. As things are not great at the minute, and okay to do that. It's okay to do that, and not doesn't mean that. I'm hoping, and I don't think it has done. It's gone the other way for me, which is a great thing. But I don't think that means people go, I'm not going to do business with him then if he's struggling a little bit or whatever. Because if I'm struggling emotionally, it might be a personal thing, it might be a work-related thing, whatever those things are. But just actually being honest. And I think if we can just create spaces where we have more honest conversations, because it doesn't, again, it's reframe. It doesn't mean me struggling doesn't mean I'm a negative person. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what I had to cope, for me to cope with that. I had to kind of wonder the same with you, like we said earlier, we're both smilers, right? We smile a lot, we go about, we've got a positive energy about us. I think when someone asks you how you are and your response is yeah, I'm fine, all we're doing is, if we're not fine, is just pushing those emotions down, and it's such a.
They'll come out in different ways that we wouldn't,
yeah.
and sometimes ways that you probably can't control. Sometimes maybe you
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
I never used to be touchy feely. I'm a hugger now.
Yeah.
I'd never thought I'd be like that.
But it's a lovely thing, isn't it? And again, back to that whole thing around, like, can we create a world where we have these honest, open conversations that's just and relationships are built around love. And I'm not talking about love in husband and wife, or you know partners, or whatever, heterosexual, homosexual, whatever partnership you are. I'm not talking about that. Just like within friendships and love, just surrounded by love. And I think, like, I've tried to go back to the 100th episode, and that night, and I just could. If you could bottle that love that was in that room that night, was just. I'm still thriving on it now.
Walking in, you could feel the atmosphere.
Yeah,
it was just different. It was just something different.
Yeah,
but it was so nice. I met so many people that I hadn't seen for ages.
Yeah.
You know, Chris, who used to own Focus. I mean, I haven't seen Chris for years.
Yeah.
And it was just lovely just to have a conversation, just to chat. You know, people like that.
It's
Of course, Rob and all those
yeah,
people.
yeah.
It's so nice that there is there's a real there's like a sort of circle of trust within this sort of Brighton community.
I think so.
You know, you can walk into a networking event and there's always a familiar face, and it's great. You know, it just makes you feel at ease. Because believe it or not, I never used to particularly like networking, but I don't even, and without not being arrogant, but I never look at the attendee list now. I turn up and have a conversation because that's.
I love that. Anyway,
Whoever you sit next to, whoever you're talking, you just have a lovely conversation.
Yeah.
And something might go somewhere, something might not.
Yeah.
But at least they know, and you know enough about them to be able to share it afterwards.
And that's exactly it. And you never know, like this. So because you can go down an attendee list and you can go, I need to speak to that person because I think that's a target. But and look, Brad will probably be
that. Of course,
and Brad will be listening, and
no, I know. Brad's the expert. I know.
But I don't know. Like I still think that, like, I could sit next to someone who, you know, might not have been in my top 5 who I was going to go if I'd gone down the list, but had an amazing conversation. And the thing is, you don't know who that person knows and what that, and you could just build a relationship with them like that and spark something special that you go, and something else comes of that. And you don't know what that is unless you're open, you go into it with an open mind like that and have an open conversation. I do think there's like for me, certainly with the top table events, I'm trying to craft that narrative that, you know, you'll get an attendee list, there'll be good people there, but it's a small room, so you're going to speak to everyone. So go and have a good conversation, and that's what we want to try and encourage. And I think there's something so powerful in that.
And also, you don't have to speak to everyone.
Yeah.
Not that you don't want to, but you don't have to. That's why sometimes there are both sides. And apologies, Bradley Hatchett, for this officially. There is a point where you would look at an attendee list, particularly if I'm going to London, I would look at an attendee list, and I wouldn't necessarily look at the names. I'd look at the different companies and what they do, because there's certain companies that are more beneficial to what we do. Not that we don't want to work with everyone, but there are certain industries, and that's great. And I get that, Brad. Officially, that's brilliant. But I used to devote not as much time talking to the people who I didn't really, at the time, see value in talking to, and you end up missing things, and you concentrate on, who's over there, who's over there. Whereas my dad used to say, when you're in the room, be in the room. When you're talking to someone, you don't have to, and you make them the most important person in the world, because they are at that time. You're talking to them, and vice versa. And then, if opportunity comes, you talk to somebody else. But I think you lose, sometimes if you've got a list to work down, and I've been on the end of some horrendous conversations where people have literally looked over their shoulder and literally just pushed you out the way to talk to somebody. And do you know what? They get to that person, and they have a 2-second conversation, and they're gone.
See, that's what I mean. That's never going to work for me. And I think, like, there's something. So there's a couple of things, and one, I guess, something that you guys help people with, right? One, unlocking that story and that narrative, because once you're aligned with that, like, you guys have helped me so much with, like, where I am now.
And you've helped us. You've helped me personally a great deal.
But I think that the stories we share, the story we're able to, our own story, right? The most important story is the one we tell ourselves. So the conversations and the self-talk and all of them things, and then being able to articulate that with other people about what that is, I'm so adamant that true human connection is built on that power of storytelling, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not so much the actual story. Sometimes it's the way that you talk about it. It's the particular tone, it's particular phrasing or language you use. But the main thing is that it's so simple that the person you're talking to will understand, and then they'll go and tell others, and vice versa. It goes back to cave paintings. You look at a cave painting, you go, right, they're chasing buffaloes. Now they've got somewhere to live, and they've got food and etc. And you go, I get that because I see the story. And it's the same when you talk to people. It's just keeping it simple. So many really, really potentially world-changing ideas fall by the wayside every single day because the people who are creating those things, whether it's a program, whether it's a medicine or whatever, can't pitch what they're doing to the person who's going to be able to give them the money to be able to do that. And subsequently, so many fantastic ideas just fall by the wayside and never see the light of day.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about one of our sponsors, Search 7. They are a search marketing agency for social good. They elevate brands' online exposure locally, nationally and globally through strategic SEO and paid media consultancy. They specialise in many different sectors including charities, e-commerce, travel, health and medical education and professional and creative services. They also give agencies and charities the exposure they deserve via their hosted agency and charity events, helping to build community and connections. Their pledge is the inspiration behind their name. Since they started in 2011, they have pledged to give back 7% of their profits to charity. This has become a minimum of 7% each year, with their current fundraising surpassing £150,000 in support of 63 charities. Their latest campaign, #Share177k, aims to raise £177,000 by the end of 2026 to mark their 15th birthday. It's a pleasure to have them as part of the Series 7 of the podcast. I'm delighted. Thanks so much for your support. Yeah, just because you're right, yeah. And it's just that it is the way you articulate, the way you share that story and what you got to say. And that's what, I guess, back to the process that you take people on that journey. It's magical because it unlocks that thing inside you, so you're able to communicate. It's almost like that euphoria moment. That's how I describe. I remember you reading the manifesto for the first time with County Business Clubs, saying when you went different hats helping the world see. So as soon as that landed, you're like, you have this feeling. That's how I can only describe it, as a feeling that comes up when you go, oh, yes, and all the little pennies all drop in your head, and you go, that's it. That's the one.
That's a great feeling for us because it's that lightning in a bottle moment where it could be a word, a phrase, a sentence. It could just be a look, and you go, oh, do you know what? And it sparks something. And then it just flows from there. It's very flattering to hear. But do you know what? The process only works if the person that we're working with, whether it's Gareth and I together or singly or whatever, if they commit to it. And you have to and again, we don't have to know anything about you. I could meet someone at the bus stop and work with them. It doesn't matter. Don't bring anything, just an open mind and maybe some coffee if you want, or something like that.
Open mind and a coffee. I want to obviously talking about the power of storytelling and the importance of it, and just I guess touching on your story and this narrative that we've been talking around the feeling of loss that you've experienced from a young age right up until obviously where you are now. I guess I'm keen to that. You mentioned earlier a little bit about that realization about life, happy to get up every day and go, oh, I'm still here. When do you think that landed for you? Was it? Would you go back to when your mum first passed, or later in life? Because I think we still live in a world where we think, oh, it's all right, I can do that tomorrow. And we do put things off a lot. You know what I mean? We still think that we're going to live forever. And like that book by Oliver Berkman, the 4,000 weeks, really like hits home because you know actually we've got. But when do you think that landed for you? That realization that actually life is finite. This is gonna happen, and for then not only to you the realization of that, but actually the thought of I'm gonna live every day.
I think when my dad passed away, really. As early back as that, he had, he used to come home every day as dirty as anything. He's a painter and decorator. I don't think he was a particularly good painter and decorator, actually. Not that he would tell me that, because my older brothers were used to have opinions and stuff, but they used to say, well, he actually wasn't. I don't know if they were joking or whatever. But all that aside, he used to come home absolutely filthy or whatever, but he was so happy, and he always used to bring me a present every single day, or at least a couple of times a week, and it could have been just an old soldier he found on a building site or something like that. But to me, that was the most precious thing in the world, and that's one of the things I remember most about him. That he was always he took so much pleasure in our joy. Everything was about the family, and everything was about, as long as we're all happy, he will go without, and it was always that. But when my dad died, that really hit me as well. I mean, that hit me like a freight train, because he was my soulmate. We were, because I was basically an only child, because my brothers and sisters had grown up by then. We spent a lot of time together. And the first time was when he broke his back. He fell off a ladder about 15, 20 years before he passed. And I only remember it when I was really, really little, going to visit him in Hayward Heath Hospital. And he was in there for, God knows, it must have been months. Because I had 4 birthdays actually when he was still in there. And then he came back from that. And when he came back from that, he stopped smoking literally overnight. I mean, obviously, it's funny because when he was in hospital, they would still they would almost like bring them cigarettes and stuff, and it was okay because it was, it was a different time. But then it was, it was weird. But then, when he finally passed, he didn't pass away because of that. It was later in life. But what I remember about that time is that he would still make sure my mum was all right. Are you okay? Do you need this? And he couldn't do anything because he was in traction, for Christ's sake. But yeah, I think it was always making sure that the people around you are happy and comfortable. In business, it's translated directly because the first thing I like to do when I meet people is make them comfortable around me. So I try not to be imposing. I couldn't do that anyway, but I try not to be imposing or whatever. And you just give people space to talk, and you find that people open up and gravitate towards you and talk to you, etc. And that's lovely, not just from a business sense, but from a personal sense, because it's very self-fulfilling that people actually trust you and talk to you. Like you go to networking events and someone will say, "Oh, I'm glad I bumped into you," and it might not be about business; it'll just be to chat. But it's so lovely.
Yeah, it's magic.
That's one of the things that really, I think, something from my dad instilled in me. He would always walk into a room and make sure that everyone was almost to the point of going, "You okay? How you doing? Yeah, you're right. Whatever." And then he'll be happy, and he wouldn't say anything after that. But just to know. But people used to come up to him, and just share their stories and talk about things. And my brothers and sisters used to do that as well, and then their kids used to do that as well. So it was, of course, they were a lot older than me, and they had kids, when they were still alive. But and that's another one of my regrets, is not my parents not really seeing my oldest Max was 2 when my dad died. But it was. Sorry, I don't really want to talk about it. Sorry, mate.
Mate, that's fine. That's fine, mate. And I guess that, back to that feeling of going, like, how, I guess, has that changed, or has it helped you, the relationship you've got with your kids, and like you said, you've grown up going, I'm gonna try and not speak about these. I'll make a joke of something and I'll deal with that. How are you with your kids and sharing their emotions and talking about that? Is that changed, or is that a similar dynamic? Or
in some ways it's a similar dynamic, but I do try and open up more, and I encourage them to open up more. The only time, typical with kids, is when they all open up. When they're not like that, is around the dinner table, and they would offer it up. You wouldn't have to quiz them or drill them about things. They'll just go, "Oh, by the way," and it ends up being again, it's translated directly into work. It's like the atmosphere, like siblings around the table, where you're just seems like you're just chatting, but you're learning so much. That's what's changed a bit more. Sometimes my tolerance levels go back to there, but that's what kids do. Of course, now they're older, they just wind me up in different ways. So, I never thought I'd be so petrified walking into a room full of teenage girls, my daughter and her friends.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even allow myself
She won't
to go
thank
there.
me for saying that, but goodness.
I can't even go there.
But no, I mean, yeah. Again, as I said right at the start, I've adopted things, and I'm sure we all do, things that our parents have said, and we don't realise they've crept in.
Yeah.
And we sort of, our brain sort of calculates the good things that we do, that they instilled in us, and not the bad things. Yeah, it translates through everything. Yeah.
Do you think like again? I guess looking back, and like you said, obviously recently lost the last member of your siblings. Over that process of losing, how did you feel? I guess talking about that point of looking back, and you're the only one of your immediate family. What process goes through that? What feelings have you experienced through that part?
I don't know, it's a big responsibility because that's it. I think it's more of a case of just appreciating life more. You don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. Yes, you plan for things, you mitigate things and whatever, personal things and business things. But I could walk out tomorrow and walk out of here and get hit by a bus. I know it's a depressing thought, but you just appreciate things. I don't mean I wake up in the morning and thank the Lord and all that. But in my head, I am very thankful. And I just...
Do you practice gratitude? Have you got like a gratitude journal? Do you practice gratitude?
Not specifically, but I do. I think I've been doing that for years and don't realise it, where at the end of the day, I do sleep very well. And I think about all the good things that have happened, and I'm thankful for, I'm thankful I've got a place to live, I've got food on the table, I've got great friends, and that include that business. My business community is, some people become friends as well. And I'm thankful for that. And health, that's another thing you take for granted. The fact that, I can go swimming, I can running or whatever. And we live in a great place because we've got the downs and the seaside, etc. But, you still have to take advantage of that. And I'm thankful for that. So I would like to learn to practice gratitude in a more structural way. But I think I sort of do it surreptitiously anyway.
I think it's the same with anything like that, meditation and all them things. Like we've got to find our own way. Like me and you both swim, so that's I don't sit and actually meditate, but I do swim, so that's a form of meditation. I guess that helps me. But I'm going to get you something. It's called the 6-minute diary, and it's really helps me, like, because I try and practice gratitude, but I don't know, it does give you that little bit of structure, and it's actually 3 things in the morning you're grateful for, and then you do 3 things that great things you've experienced later in the night. Now, it does only take literally 3 minutes morning, 3 minutes in the evening, but I'm trying to, the last couple of weeks I've committed to doing that every day, and it's been great. And it just
How does that make you feel then?
But it just
Do you feel different from when you
I just
started
think I think it just, like, because I like to think I'm really open, and I've been a lot more open about stuff recently. And it's really strange where I am right now. People are asking me, and I mentioned it at a Big Business Breakfast Club. People are asking me, "How are you doing?" And I'm great at the minute, and I feel really good about that. And I'm not saying I'm great like I would have done 10 years ago. And I'm fine. Really busy. I'm just going, I'm great. I'm in such a good headspace at the moment, and I'm really grateful for that. Really grateful for that. And you go, whereas if we'd having this conversation in December, I would have, and I was quite open then, but I was not in a good place. I was really struggling, and I think there's just a shift by a couple of things. A shift by letting go of a few things and just really honing down and going, I'm going to make changes this year. I'm going to be focused on certain stuff. But also it does help to. I think it really helps to practice, because you go, oh God, we are so much to be grateful for. Right? And I guess, like, trying to touch on your story again, is that when you're surrounded by and you've experienced loss in the amount that you have, and the grief of losing family. I've got a brother. Do you know what I mean? I can't comprehend that. I guess just to people that, I guess a message to people, I guess that you want to share is that to just appreciate every moment, right?
Yeah, and not that it's going to be taken away suddenly. The extreme circumstances I get, and life choices maybe, but just enjoy yourself a bit more. You know, things aren't so serious, and really, I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart, just try not to worry about things that are out of your control, because you will never be able to control them in a million years, no matter how much you try. But it will just take you down if you do, and that's life and business. I think in equal measures, because we all make decisions in business that we wake up and we go, oh my God, did I really do that? Did I spend my money on that or whatever? But you know what? You can't control it. It's done. You learn to work with it or live with it. It's the same in life. I'm not some guru, but I can only talk about my own experience.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I do appreciate every day. I appreciate people around me. I appreciate things that I can do and physically do, things that I can mentally do. And I appreciate the life that I've got and the job that I've got. I can't tell you how, if we were like kids at Christmas the night before working with a client, because I don't know, it's so gratifying that people will actually trust you enough to open up and share what they do. But just, it's the personal journey as well as the business journey.
Do you think, like, I think you alluded to a little bit earlier, but do you think, like, actually within that process of what you do, how much and people sharing their stories and opening up, and that's helped you with maybe part of the healing process of the stuff you've
very much so. Absolutely, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's because I liken it to, for example, you know, if you have breakups in your life or whatever, you listen to sad songs and it gets you through, or sometimes you listen to happy songs. We don't know which type of song, in theory, we're going to get. It could be a real horrendous journey that's taken you to a place of absolute happiness and calm, or it could be an up and down journey, but it's still a journey, and we can take resonance in different parts of that. That's nice because we can see ourselves in different parts of it. For me, especially Gareth Sharp as a tack, he's like that. I'm a lot more literal, and I almost live it with them. So I sit on the client side, and I've almost become part of this story, and I'm literally living it with them. It's like watching a movie. You get right into it, you know, and that's great because then you can, again, same with stories. You live your own life through parallels and through, and metaphorically speaking, through the journeys that other people take. So you can empathise with that. That goes back to our old argument with the old USP. It's not a unique selling point, position, proposition, whatever you want to call it, because nothing is unique, but it's the way that you do it that's unique. So it's ESP, isn't it? It's an empathetic selling position or proposition. People buy people. That's the first bit. If they don't do that, then you can't do whatever you want to do.
And how is that changing? What impact is AI going to have on that? Like this storytelling process, this levels of communication, people sharing their stories. How is AI going to impact that?
I don't think it will impact in terms of originality. It's fantastic for saving time. So if you're writing a post or whatever, you can sanity check it to a degree, but it will always be somebody else's work because it's based on something else that it's scraped from somewhere else, and it's taken a parallel. It's not your own work, as it were. It's like copying somebody's exam and interpreting it as your own. But in terms of time saving and things you can do autonomously, it's fantastic. For people who can't afford or don't want to go through a more personal process like we do, there's so many tools out there, and that's fantastic. It's a great way to do it, but it will never ever substitute being in a room with somebody and being able to change the tone of a conversation just for the hell of it to see where it goes and getting something from it. You will never be able to look, maybe you will in the future, I don't know, but you'll never be able to look somebody in the eye that way and go, okay, I need to back off a bit now, or maybe I need to question a bit more, or tell me a bit more of that. There was something you were going to say but didn't. You know, you get that cheeky look in your eye, or a moment of dread or something. I don't think maybe it will be able to do that, I don't think it will stifle originality in that respect, but it certainly makes a life a lot easier in terms of quick writing something. Our work is 100% human. We don't use AI, but I appreciate the fact that it's going to save time in certain aspects for people who don't have budgets to work with. You know, the professionals who would do that.
I agree. I think it is a brilliant tool, and that is what it is. It's a brilliant tool.
Yeah.
But and Marina said it. Like she wrote a book about it. Leading so, but it's that human connect. It's never gonna replace this looking in someone's eyes and feeling that. And I'm keen to. You mentioned about asking certain questions and getting people to what and to unlock that story. What do you find is the stories that maybe people don't want to share or uncomfortable to share that you feel that we should be, I guess, and I guess that's the process of what you try and do. How do you unlock them, and what stories are they that they're not?
Well, do you know what? It's weird because nothing is taboo, nothing's off the table, and I don't say that lightly. It seems to have developed into almost like a therapy session. It's a structured process. We have our 6-stage process, and that's fine, or 2-stage process if it's a shorter, 2-hour session, etc. But people share everything, and I mean everything. They just open up, and yes, we'd sign NDAs, etc. And of course, we wouldn't use that, but they have to share it. They feel like they have to share it to get to a place of clarity, similar to the way that you do. I mean, I don't normally open up to people like this, but you've just got this way, and hopefully that's the way that clients like to think. Everybody share. There's always something that's deeply personal that makes them, I don't know, it almost like regresses them to like a childhood or something, or an early point in their life, and then everything makes sense because each process feeds the next part of it. Yeah, there isn't. I don't think I can't share any of these, of course, but there isn't anything. I don't think that we've, things like birth, marriage, divorce, death, whatever. It all comes out because if you start a business, it comes from a certain place. Emotionally before the business thought, and then it sort of goes from there logically. But yeah, people just want to share that, and there is nothing there's a few maybe saucy taboo things which don't come up, but in terms of those 5 big things in life, those big questions, it all comes up, and I don't know why, and we're flattered because that people would open up in that way and trust us.
I think there's so much about, for me, it's so much about creating spaces where people are able to feel. Because if you feel, there's a few things in it. Know, like, and trust. If you know, like, and trust someone, you feel more comfortable to open up. But if you can create that environment, it's creating those environments, isn't it, where people feel that they can be honest and they can be open, and by doing that, you more comes out. And the real, I guess, is trying to get the real story out, isn't it? I guess that's the thing. So many people get their narrative wrong, because it's not the real story that aligns with their values, purpose, whatever that is.
Again, it's the, without putting too fine a point on it, it's the so what moment. You can share, you can overshare, and I get that, but that all forms part of the rich tapestry to get you at a certain point. But if somebody wants to work with you on a professional level, yes, they have to trust you. But then there's that distinction between trusted and trustworthy. So if they meet you for the first time, not that you're not a nice person, but they won't trust you implicitly because they don't know you yet. But if you have enough, but if you talk to them in the right way, that they understand the reasons why you're doing what you're doing and the problem you're solving, you will demonstrate that you're trustworthy, and that's just opens up doors. And it's not a sales trick. It's just, that's interesting. I like the way that they talk about that. I like a particular tone they use, particular language. I understand why they want to solve the problem they want to solve, and I get that. So that's great. I'd like to know more. And that's all it is. It's just permission to talk more and ask more questions, I guess, and deep dive more.
I think that's the word that comes to me, like permission. You give permission. Like I find when you're sitting opposite someone and they're, like, if you talk about vulnerability, someone is vulnerable with you, they give you permission to be vulnerable. Right? So I remember when we done the conversation around IVF, me and Kyriakos and Tom all shared it. But I talked about the first time me and Tom sat opposite each other, had a lunch. I knew him from networking. We met up, had a couple of, used to say hello, but never. And we said, let's get a lunch in. We sat down, and mate, what would you want? You want a beer? And he's like, no, I'm not drinking at the minute. And he was straight away, he was open and went, no, well, I'm not drinking at the moment because we're going through an IVF journey. And he just gave immediately his vulnerability, and I didn't really know him that well, but his vulnerability and openness gave me permission to think, I went through IVF, and we had the whole conversation was nothing to do with business. We just talked about the IVF journey, but me and him have become really good mates over that and built a really strong relationship based on. But I think I wouldn't have opened with, I've got twins, I've got to add them through IVF probably off the bat, whereas he was open to do that, and I think there's something. That word really comes out for me. Creating an environment, but allowing people, giving people the permission to do
just
that.
Let them know it's okay.
Yeah.
People, you've got a natural gift, haven't you? People just open up with you. It's funny because you and I have had conversations the last sort of few times we bumped into each other, and I don't know if you've got the feeling I've always wanted to open up to you privately, but we didn't ever to get to it because it was always, passing here or going to another event or whatever. And I was not saving everything up, but I felt like I wanted to tell you first, podcast aside, privately. And that's a real gift. People want to open up to you.
Yeah, but I think you talk about it. You go past. I think you meet people within, and there's certain people that are business colleagues and associates, and then there's that transcends that and become friends. And I see you as a friend, and I hopefully the same way. And
Absolutely.
I think that's that changes the dynamic then, doesn't it? It's not about, we can chat about storytelling and business and stuff, and it's fascinating because we're both passionate about it and we're both fascinated by it, right? So we would talk till the cows come home about this. But the flip side to that, about, if I've shared that I've had problems with Kelly, or there's things I'm worried about, or I've what's going on in a business, and all of those things, you've seen me at those times, and I've been able to share. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think and that's because
there's no barrier.
And that's personally, I'd love us to move more towards a society like that, because I still think, I don't know if you've seen that recently, that Adolescence, the thing on Netflix, which is
I've watched that a couple of times.
Yeah, I think incredible, really moving. But you've got the Andrew Tates over here, and you look at that dynamic and that message that he's putting out in the world, that you just go,
that's genuinely scary, isn't it? And also, what's scary as well, sorry to interrupt, but what's scary as well is that it's almost like it's like validation if he gets away with it.
Yeah. It's
really scary, isn't it?
It is really, really scary. And I'm like, I just that side of it, and for my kids at the young age they are, I'm scared. I'll be honest, I'm scared about that world that they're growing up in, and how I'm gonna. So again, back to I wanna, and as soppy as this sounds, I wanna keep putting love out into the world, and keep putting this positive energy and positive messages and kindness and those types of messages, as opposed, and actually my kids have seen me cry. I want them to see me cry. Do you know what I mean? I want them to see me be emotional and go and process my emotion. And it's a work in progress for me. I'll be honest with you, it's a work in progress for me. I'm still not brilliant at it. I still, even like prior to Christmas when I weren't feeling as great, I still tried to keep myself away from people a little bit more. I've got to get over that, because actually we can. And this feeling of, strength in vulnerability is such a powerful message, and I want that to be out there in the world. I think it's and again, back to you coming on here and talking, talking about the things that we have done today about loss and grief and stuff that we don't talk about. We don't talk about death. We don't talk about these things on a daily basis in society, and because there's that narrative around it. And again, back to the bravery for you to be able to come on and share that, to show that vulnerability, to be able to open up. It's such a fucking powerful, for me, it's such a powerful message. For
years ago, I would never have done it. I would have thought it was a sign of weakness, and people see you in the street and they go, he's just he's soppy or whatever, 'cause
But it's stuff like this that will change that, mate, right?
yeah,
It's stuff
yeah.
like this.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done sort of martial arts and boxing
Yeah.
and stuff most of my life, but I hate fighting. It's all been to a point where I would never want to get into a riff, but that's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
And it's not about fighting; it's everything but that.
Yeah.
Because I always like to think, I'm a lover, not a fighter, as the old saying goes. I would rather talk my way out of something, and I've talked my way out of some real situations in the past.
You and me both.
I'm not kidding. But do you know what? You end up in some situations. You end up being mates with the people who wanted to knock your head off.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing as well. And again, it's giving them opening up and being really honest. And at some point, bullies will always be bullies, and they only understand violence. I get that. But if you shock people, like on a football pitch, I used to swear and curse and whatever. But then I started confusing people and say somebody kicked me or whatever. I go, "You sausage," and they'll go, "Oh, what was that?" And they'll go away and think about it, and you've completely diffused it. And it was really self-satisfying because in your head, you really wanted to have a go at them, but you just foxed them, and that was the best insult I could ever get. "Oh, you sausage," because I play football with a guy called Dave McCulloch, and he used to be a knocker boy, so he was like antiques dealer, etc.
Yeah.
He's a lovely guy. I was good friends with his son Lloyd, who I play football with as well. But Dave was he was so hard. I mean, he was like granite, and he used to call people a sausage. And I would look at him and go, "What?" And it was brilliant, and he'd run away laughing. And I sort of adopted that. Again, that was older role models.
Oh yeah.
And you just say things, but it confuses people. But yeah, it's just diffusing situations.
Yeah.
Not that you get into those situations all the time, but sometimes there are situations where you can't avoid somebody who wants to be violent or argue with you. But if you can just diffuse it, better than I took the birds from the trees.
But no, mate, I'm with you. I've been really fortunate to go through my life and not being, had that many fights because I could talk my way out.
I think it's a badge of honour.
Yeah.
Cool as that.
I've especially growing up in Dagenham, that was not the norm. Do you know what I mean?
I wouldn't venture to Dagenham for a night out growing up.
No.
We even went to Brixton when I was a teenager on the train to watch gigs, and we felt that was safe.
Yeah, mate. Yeah,
we saw some good bands.
I guess like from all of your experience, I guess going through as we're coming towards that part, like I'm keen to like what's especially being the last one out of your immediate family, is there like I'm interested to what does legacy mean? Like, is there how important is legacy to you?
Legacy, I'm not one of these people that think I want to leave my life on my mark on the earth and statues or whatever. Not that it ever will be, but you know what I mean, that mentality. I just want people, it's one of the questions that we ask some of our clients, what do you want to be famous for? And that's not Hollywood famous. That's, how do you want people to talk about you when you're not in the room? And just that, I just want people to remember I'm a nice bloke, just get along with me. But legacy is important because it's, in terms of my family, I really want to carry on that. It's like an inner strength, but it's also vulnerable in their own way. And I like to think I'm a lot more open than they would ever be. Of course, it's a different time, but I think in terms of legacy per se, it's just just treating people as you want to be treated. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. My mum used to say, my old mum used to say, she said, no matter how nasty you think people are, she said, at the end of the day, everybody bar none just wants to be happy, and maybe to be loved or to have the opportunity to love someone. So just remember that whenever you get into a trivial argument with somebody bickering or something, just remember that.
That's such a lovely.
Everybody wants to be happy at the end of the day,
And I think like it's something because there's a couple of things with that. Like one, like again back to the emotion side of stuff, just processing and understanding and dealing with emotions, and trying to process them is actually that we do want to be happy, but it's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel those emotions, and yes, we a happy emotion is
Because we're human.
because we're human, yeah. But it's understanding there's anger will come into it. I haven't got to see something's got to happen, and I've got to feel happy about that. I can feel angry about that, or I can feel upset about that, and there's those different processing those things. And I think there's I liken it a little bit. I can't remember if it was Yavon or someone I was talking to about the happiness and sadness and stuff, but almost to the point of that it's not necessarily happiness, but it's joy. I want to feel joy in my life. But you can't really appreciate the full happiness and joy if you haven't necessarily experienced the sadness and grief. And I guess that's what potentially this.
Yeah, I don't. Sometimes I don't think it's as clear cut as that, because a lot of my friends have still got their parents, etc. And that's brilliant. And that's fantastic. I love that. So you don't necessarily have to experience, I think, extreme grief.
No.
But like you say, there's always a balance, isn't there?
Mm.
You don't know one pleasure until you felt pain or whatever. It's that saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I think it's completely right. You do appreciate things more when, in times of sadness, you appreciate the good times, because otherwise you wouldn't know what the good times were. You'll think times of sadness were the only times. It's like animals that were abused and things, and they die. They never know happiness, and that breaks my heart. Let's hope that people would see that good side, just to experience, just for a moment, even just to know that that's what it is. Anyway, so I'm talking about animals again.
Mate,
Owning a dog, mate. Honestly,
mate,
I love my dog more than my kid. Sorry, cut a bit.
It's one thing. Just before we finish up, I want have you? I know you mentioned about having therapy recently. Is there stuff that's come out of therapy that you didn't think would, or have you learned? Or what have you learned about yourself through that process, I guess?
Yeah, I didn't realise I had such a temper. I didn't even realise I had it in me, because it never really comes out. I don't mean like violent or anything, but I have this real sense of that I didn't realise, of injustice. Like, I would always be the one that has to say something. Maybe it's an age thing and a confidence, I don't know. But if somebody's walking down the street and they bumped into somebody and they didn't apologise and they walked off, I'd almost chase them down and say, did you realise you didn't say it? And I would find myself doing that, and I wouldn't realise I was doing it. And I've always had this, I don't like, I hate injustice. I hate anybody. That's what I've despised, bullying, all that sort of stuff. And but I've never been in a position to do anything. But now, when you're older and wiser and a little bit bigger and gruffy, I guess, you sort of, not in a physical way, but you can almost, because you're more intellectually confident, you can talk people out of things, but you can also let them see the fact that they're not. I don't mean I'm going around in a red cape, saving people, but I find myself talking up, and I can't control it. It's something, and I don't know why. Especially around people that you love and your friends and stuff. I'm always the one that has to say something, and they're going, "Oh no, shut up, Terry."
But I wonder if, again, and this is just me thinking out loud, but is it that you, because of the experience of loss and grief that you've been through, that you get to a point in life where you won't compromise on certain things, right?
Absolutely.
You won't compromise. Like, I think maybe prior to that, we don't allow ourselves to get to that point where you go, that's not right, I'm not going to put so you end up putting boundaries in place. You're able to go, I'm not accepting that, I will accept that, that's not right, and I'll do something about that, and open to change that. Because again, I think that realisation around life is finite, we're not going to,
It's the one thing that is finite in life.
Yeah, it's gonna,
and taxes,
but but it's gonna be, that is gonna happen. So actually, it's back to all the time that I've referenced it on here, the Bronnie Ware book, the 5 Aggressive, living a life true to myself, right? So again, it's back to those things of not knowing your values, living in alignment with them, and so when other people, but get into a place of confidence where you're able to actually, I'm doing this for me, but you look over here and actually I don't agree with that, so I'm going to step out and and there's something.
Not in every situation. I mean, there's
no.
a gang with guns and knives. Maybe I'll walk the other way.
Let's not go.
Things that are in your control. Again, that goes back to that. Don't worry about things that are out of your control, but things that you can control and you can influence in a nice, positive way. if you can do that, then you sleep better at night, I think, and I do.
Yeah.
I don't go out looking for trouble.
No.
But I'd always speak up for somebody.
Yeah, I love that. That says a lot about you, mate, and what a wonderful, wonderful human you are. Mate, it's been wonderful having you on. I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me on my journey and being such a good friend, but also just like reaching out and coming on and being as open and honest about like some really tough subjects and stuff that, like I say, for me, it's trying to normalise different conversations, whether that be around mental health, whether it be around suicide, whether it be around death and loss and grief and those type of subjects that actually, hopefully, these conversations can help people to process them, because all these conversations are parts of life, right?
Yeah.
And if people within our business community and within our community and within society, we can have these conversations that help other people to have them conversation, maybe we create a different world, right?
Just making sense of life. That's all we want.
Yeah, I love that.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate that.
Mate, listen, you've been brilliant, but I don't know if you know, we've started a new tradition on the podcast with my, and this is quite fitting for you, of course, because we've got my storytelling cards. Look at this. So we're going to give these a little shuffle. Choose a card, any card, and then pass it to me, and I'll ask you the question. Here we go. How do you measure growth in your own life? What signs or changes do you look for?
Firstly, it's when I'm sleeping well, because that means that I'm happy and not necessarily stressed. I'm happy more nowadays. Just, again, as you alluded to earlier, just joy. You just see joy in things. You don't always don't always look to be offended. I think that's something that happens a lot these days. Yeah, just see joy in things. I think just, and the fact that what we do for a living, my brothers never understood what I did for a living. You tell stories. Just because we don't break rocks really. We're not going out working on the roads and some really hard jobs where you come at the end of the day and you're shattered. But it is emotionally draining. But just enjoy it. And I love what I do. That's the thing. If I can carry on doing what I do and love it in the same way, then I'll just be happy, because that's you just look forward to doing what you do, I think. But yeah, just try and see the joy in things.
Mate, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate that.
And that, as they say,
I love you, Sam.
is a wrap. I love you too, mate. I love you too.